What is culture? Culture is the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits of a racial, religious, or social group. It is also the characteristic features of everyday existence shared by people in a place or time. The interviewee I chose is my father, Jared Sims, who stated his own definition of culture.
A recognition of history, relationship with your community,
Yeah.
who you are basically.
This definition gave me an insight into my father's cultural contributions to Australia as a nation. My father was born in 1963 and grew up in Auburn, a suburb within the ever-growing metropolis of Sydney, New South Wales. He was the youngest of 7 children, living within a Catholic home where a scarcity of money was a daily struggle. His father Harley worked as a storeman in a metal factory, while his mother Rita stayed home to care for the children, which was quite common for women of Catholic faith. Harley was a diligent man and had very similar characteristics to my father. Not only did he work hard for his family, but he worked hard for his community. How would you describe Australia as a nation? I asked Jared.
I think we are not a racist community. We are actually a very welcoming, understanding community of culture, of religion.
It was an interesting point Jared made as he acknowledged racism in Australia, which raises the question, will Australia ever truly recover from our racist past? During European settlement in 1788, the Indigenous culture was not recognised. In fact, historically, Aboriginals had very little input in Australia's social, economic, or political society. Since then, there has been numerous notions to try and reverse this saddening history. Unfortunately, these efforts of voicing the Indigenous people's rights didn't begin politically until 1925, when Frederick Maynard began the first organised campaign known as the Australian Aboriginal Progressive Association. Examples of Indigenous right acts over the 20th century include the Indigenous People's Right to Vote in 1962, the Whitlam government introducing the Racial Discrimination Act in 1975, Robert Tickner, the Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, introducing the Reconciliation Act in 1991, and the Mabo decision, introducing the Native Title Act in 1993. John Howard and Kevin Rudd were true ambassadors in attempting to rectify Australia's unfortunate beginnings. They introduced the key term of closing the gap socially between non-Indigenous people and Indigenous people. Ex-Prime Minister Kevin Rudd delivered a speech in 2008 also acknowledging and apologising for the wrongdoings of our predecessors. As stated, the government was generating numerous legislation changes to create our ideal nationhood and thus cementing Jared's statement that we are not a racist nation. Jared explained this time of Australia to encourage
the concept of mateship and have a go still continues to linger today.
This concept is something that Jared takes into his own culture and community. Jared is a well-known teacher, he volunteers in local food halls, he is a volunteer firefighter, and participates in numerous other community events. What drives you to do that? I asked.
My drive, I think it's to make a difference, to serve people.
In conclusion, I believe the principles of Jared's concepts ties in with Australia's own concepts of nationhood and culture within our own community of having a go, and thus demonstrates Australia's determination to forge a nation independent of its colonial past, and to move forward into one united nation. Thank you for listening.